to Leadership Reimagined, where game changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. I'm Janice Ellig, CEO and founder of Ellig Group, executive search advisors, pioneers in redefining executive search through our unwavering commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today on Leadership Reimagined, our topic is Revolutionizing Women's Health Insights from Aspira's CEO. And I'm delighted to welcome Nicole Sandford, CEO and board member at Aspira Women's Health. Prior to joining Aspira, Nicole was a global board services leader at Ella Group, which I was very happy to have her here. And prior to that, she spent 27 plus years with the global consultancy firm Deloitte, launching and leading all aspects of operations for multiple business. And in her last role as U.S. Managing Partner at Deloitte Risk and Financial Advisory, LLP's regulatory and operational risk business, she led a major team. Previously, she was a Deloitte and Touche LLP audit partner specializing in high-growth global companies in the technology, healthcare, and industrial sectors. She is the past board chair of Girl Scouts of Connecticut and on other major not-for-profit boards. Nicole has received the Yale School of Management's Rising Star Award and the International Alliance for World of Difference 100 Award. And I am so delighted, Nicole, to welcome you to today's podcast and to welcome you back to Ella Group.
Thank you, Janice. You've been a wonderful mentor to me for many, many years. So it's a true honor to be a guest on the podcast today. Thank you for having me.
Well, I was there in many sessions that you had at Deloitte when you were building out corporate governance and working with so many companies. So you have quite a impressive background with your Deloitte career and now at Aspira and the impact that you made at Ella Group. So I want to go back on your career journey, which is not the most common for a CEO. So tell us a bit about how you got to that CEO seat and how your experiences in the past of your career have prepared you to be the CEO of a women's health organization.
Yes, I've had a little bit of a winding road, little unique path. I started, as you mentioned, as an auditor at Deloitte, but I was always willing to take on new assignments, go in different directions. And over time, I found that I had a real knack for starting or turning around businesses. And so I loved doing that. I had incredible opportunities at Deloitte to really stretch myself and go into different directions. And I decided in probably about 2019 or so, I decided that I was ready to go out and try some new things, and joined Ellig Group to lead the board practice, which was incredible. And I also was looking for my first board role myself. And at that time, I was already a shareholder of Aspira. I had learned about Aspira Women's Health when I had participated on a panel discussion at the Yale School of Management with my predecessor. And we were talking about resilience, and she was talking about this incredible blood test that was available for assessing malignancy risk in adnexal masses. And that really piqued my interest. Not only am I a breast cancer survivor and therefore automatically at higher risk for ovarian cancer, but I also lost my grandmother to ovarian cancer. So as a mother of two daughters who are kind of walking around with some, genetic predispositions, I was very interested in this blood test. So I went back and did some research and realized that the science was incredibly sound, and that this test was frankly overdue to become the standard of care. So bought some stock, started to follow the company, and was subsequently invited to join the audit committee as the chair, which was a perfect fit with both my passion and my background at Deloitte. And fast forward a little bit after that, while I was still working with you, as a matter of fact, and the CEO role was offered to me when my predecessor decided to retire. So, I didn't have to think too long about whether I wanted to lead the company for all the reasons I just mentioned, but looking back at the experiences that I had at Deloitte and then working with Ellig Group and your clients, I felt like I had been really sort of training for this role my whole career, working with, great companies and also with companies that are, turning things around, working with boards and senior leadership teams to align around strategy, all the things that we got to do together in the board practice really helped to prepare me.
It did, Nicole. You had exceptional experiences, but now you're in the number 1 seat of a publicly traded company. And I want to talk a little bit about Aspira's business and what you're trying to do. But first, in that 2 years that you've been in that seat, what are some of the takeaways, what you've learned as being the number 1 in charge of a publicly traded company?
I don't think you ever stop learning when you're the CEO. And I've always said that my success has been more than 50%, probably majority, fueled by having great people around me, both in terms of my executive team and the employees of the company. So, one of the things that I did as soon as I arrived at Aspira is I took a really critical look at the team that we had and really wanted to understand if we needed to make any changes. And I believe, and I've always believed, that if someone is in the wrong role or with the wrong company, you're not doing them any favors by continuing to have them on the team. It's the much more ethical thing to do to have an honest conversation about what they might be doing differently, either within the company or somewhere else, right? So, that's not the funnest part of the job, frankly, but it's important to have the backbone to do those things. And what you find is when you do upgrade the talent or when you do make tough decisions, the high performing people in the company respond and they put their shoulder into it and they see that you're willing to make the hard choices. And so keeping people engaged, inspired, really behind the mission, that's what it's all about. If you have the right people in the company and they're excited and passionate about what you do, your job as the CEO is definitely going to be a lot easier. Now, having said that, it has been a really challenging market for biotech companies overall, for diagnostic companies overall. We all know, we read the same articles, women's health is underfunded. That has been probably the most frustrating part of all, is to have a technology that works better than anything we've ever had in a disease that kills women, and to still be searching for people that are willing to, fundamental investors who are willing to invest for the long term. That's a little bit frustrating, but we're not gonna we're never giving up. I'm certainly never giving up, and as long as the technology keeps evolving, I think we have what we need.
So tell us, so there are many listeners here who may want to be, one, buying your stock, investing in you. So tell us about Aspira's Over One, the Overwatch, and really your products and how they're revolutionizing women's health.
Yeah, sure. So, I like to say that Aspira was developing AI powered tests before anybody really understood what AI powered meant. Now it's obviously the sexy catchphrase, but, going all the way back to the early 2000s, we had licensed technology from Johns Hopkins University and built that into a really, really powerful algorithm. With a simple blood test, we can assess the risk of malignancy for any woman who has an adnexal mass. And for those of you who don't know, an adnexal mass is a mass that's either on or in the ovary. Usually that's a sign that, well, in most cases, it's a sign that absolutely nothing's wrong. Most of these masses are benign, non-cancerous. They're, pretty, but you wouldn't even know they were there if you didn't have an image of it. And so, but women, rightfully so, they worry when they see a mass. Maybe they know somebody who had ovarian cancer. We all know that when it's caught late, it's quite deadly. But when it's caught early, it's not. So, the default may have been, let's go ahead and take the ovaries always. But that's not healthy for women. Long term, you want, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you want to keep your ovaries for your whole life if they're healthy and if your risk is acceptable. So, our tests, we have multiple tests, but we call it OvaSuite because we have a test for every single mass, every woman who presents with a mass to the doctor. So it will, with a simple blood test, run an algorithm, an AI powered algorithm, to tell the doctor what is the risk that this mass is a malignancy. And if you're going to surgery, that's important because you want a gynecologic oncologist to do that surgery. They're specially trained to remove malignancies, which can be accidentally ruptured by an untrained doctor who's doing a hysterectomy or an oophorectomy. And if you're not going to surgery and you've decided to take a watchful waiting approach because you and your clinician both believe the risk of malignancy is low, then you can preserve your ovaries. And that is a huge deal. In fact, there was just an article in the Wall Street Journal about the importance of ovaries for long-term health in terms of heart disease risk. Now there's some linkages to potential dementia, Parkinson's, a whole host of things that we're now finding that women who have their ovaries removed and stop producing estrogen, they become at risk. So what we as a company are committed to doing is continuing to develop, but we already have commercially available tests that are the best in the world at this. And we're going to keep driving those to be standard of care, but we're going to also continue to develop the most effective blood test, non-invasive test for identifying malignancy risk and both find cancer earlier and preserve ovaries whenever possible.
So, Nicole, what is the message to women, men, everyone out there, and to doctors in terms of should this test be administered as part of a regular checkup every 2 years, every year? What's the protocol here?
Yeah, so our tests are not screening tests. They are for symptomatic patients. So they wouldn't be something that you just automatically have when you go see the doctor. They are for women who have been diagnosed with an adnexal mass, which impacts well north of 1 million women a year. 1,200,000 to 1,500,000 is a solid estimate as to the number of women who will be diagnosed with an adnexal mass. So it's not a screen, but if you do have a mass, and actually, I'm going to back up a second and just say one of the most probably damaging myths about ovarian cancer is that it's a silent killer and there are no symptoms. The World Ovarian Cancer Coalition does a fabulous study around the world, and their research really says there are symptoms. The challenge is the symptoms are very similar to other things. So, the first message to women and to anybody who loves a woman who has her ovaries is don't ignore your symptoms. If something feels wrong, push to have an ultrasound and see what's going on. And then, if there's a mass present, push to have a test like our OvaSuite tests performed, so that you can make a decision based on data and facts and not fear. I think a lack of effective diagnostic tools have led women to make a lot of decisions about their bodies and their reproductive organs, based on fear, better safe than sorry. But that has not translated into faster diagnosis or better outcomes. So it doesn't work. We need to do things differently, and that includes taking advantage of technology like the OvaSuite tests.
So, is this an education of the physicians?
All of the above. It's the physicians, it's the payers, it's the patients. All of us have to be willing to look at new technologies. Our test for ovarian cancer, our tests for ovarian cancer are a great example, but there are others as well. And gynecologists really, maybe because they tend to be a little bit more risk averse potentially, have been slower to adopt some of the newer technologies in the gynecologic disease space. So, we want to get to a point where people are as willing to stay on top of and understand the risk and what can be done from a diagnostic perspective for all gynecologic diseases and women's health issues, and not just breast cancer, which we've brought, we've made so much wonderful project in progress in breast cancer.
So, you said in past interviews that we need a radical change in how we address women's health. Is this all part of it? And are there other things that can be done? And what is Aspira doing in terms of this radical change?
There's so much to do. I'm very pleased with the recent changes that we've seen at the federal level. I'll start with federal, but there's been some interesting developments at the state level as well, to fund additional research for women's health, and that's broadly referring to both diseases that only affect with people who were born female or born with female reproductive organs, and diseases that affect that population differently. So it's not just about gynecologic disease or female reproductive disease. It's also about things that affect us differently, right? So we saw the Biden administration allocate about $100 million of new research dollars to women's health, which was, revolutionary. And they're moving quickly. Also, ARPA-H, which is the agency overseeing the granting of those funds, is moving pretty quickly to get that money allocated to women's health, which is phenomenal. At the state level, we're seeing lots of different biomarker testing bills being put forward. A dozen or so states have passed laws saying that in their state, they would like to make sure that all insurers, commercial and otherwise, are paying for biomarker tests for all different kinds of diseases, including cancer. Delaware passed a law specific to ovarian cancer coverage, which is wonderful. But there are some that are broader than that, not just for ovarian cancer, but for other diseases. So I love to see the momentum. I think there's so much more to do because a really difficult part of being a small company with an innovative technology is just the lift that's involved in getting paid by commercial insurers. Commercial insurers that have Medicare Advantage plans have to pay for our tests because Medicare has reviewed our technology and decided that it's medically necessary. It's on their fee schedule, so Medicare patients get the test paid for. But that same commercial insurance company can look at another beneficiary of their another plan and say it's not necessary or it's experimental, which is to me just a little bit crazy. So we need to see that end of the problem fixed, not just for Aspira, but for all innovative technologies. You can't go to 70 different insurers and convince them one at a time with different information and different data requirements. It's not feasible. So I love to see the research, but we need to fix the other end as well.
Yeah, so the payers have to be consistent in terms of if it's being covered by one, such as Medicare for your test, it should be covered by all.
Exactly.
Otherwise, women's health is at risk again by unnecessary surgeries or, just not making it a simple procedure to for a cure. So much more has to be done. Now, you have and you mentioned this earlier, you have a personal connection with Aspire for your own experiences. And I'm wondering, does it make a difference? And I've spoken to other CEOs of other organizations. Some really feel personally committed and invested. It seems like you really have this on a very personal front to what you're doing in leading a company in terms of being really purposeful because you've had that experience.
I would agree with that. I mean, let's be honest. I was really happy doing what I was doing with you. So I wasn't out there looking to become the CEO of anything, much less a biotechnology company like Aspira. So, the passion for the mission and the desire to make sure that this technology becomes the standard of care for all women. I should mention also, there's another diversity aspect here that a lot of people don't know. But ovarian cancer is an even bigger problem for many ethnic groups, and women of color face different types of cancer that are sometimes harder to spot. They are diagnosed later, their fatality rates are higher. And one thing that I noticed recently in some of the data I was looking at is ovarian cancer rates for white women in the US have actually been trending downward for many, many years. I mean, it's still, we still have a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong, but it has been coming down a little bit. There's been no movement at all in other ethnic groups such as Black women and Hispanic women. There's no change in their survival rates over time, or their cases or survival rates, which is partially because they are even less likely to be diagnosed using the sort of traditional method of ultrasound, MRI, and some biomarker tests that were approved for other uses. So this is a diversity issue, not just in terms of people born female, but it's also a huge diversity issue for women of color. So, and as you know, I have always been passionate about diversity. It's been kind of my number one cause since since I was able to have a voice and use it. I've been using it for enhancing understanding of how diversity drives better business outcomes. And so, for me, it just was the coming together of so many things I care about that brought me here.
Well, Nicole, knowing you for all these years as I do, from your Deloitte days, you are passionate about whatever you're doing, and it is a position when you take that on, you go gung ho, you're gonna make a difference, and you did that at Ellig Group because when you joined me after being, 27 plus years at Deloitte, you said and I said, "Would you run the board advisory and search practice?" And you said, "Absolutely." But you also said, "We need to get more women and underrepresented groups into the boardroom as well as the C-suite, but into the boardroom." And you started the Ella Group Board Readiness Coaching Program, which today 28 executives have completed the program and over 70% are on a board. So you made a great difference in terms of preparing people for that next executive role in the boardroom. So tell us a little bit about why you were so passionate about that and why you said this we must do it and you made that happen.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, it couldn't have happened anywhere other than Ellie Group. And the team that you had when I came in was already, really well positioned to do the things that we were talking about doing. So, first and foremost, all the credit in the world goes to you, Janice, for building such a great team and for being willing to do things differently, and to invest in something that we both believed was important, but had never been done before, frankly. So, the board program, when I would talk, we both of us did a lot of sort of, I'll call it free consulting with people when they were looking for a board, their first board, especially women and other diverse groups. And that was wonderful, but they often left those calls feeling, a little bit overwhelmed. They didn't really have the resources to do the things we were telling them to do, in terms of, build your network, fix your bio, do some specific targeting. And so it's kind of ironic. You're talking to people who have always had a team of people, or at least in recent past, had a team of people to do things. And now they're out looking for themselves and they don't have a team of people behind them to support them and help them. So, just being arms and legs that can do those kinds of things for them was I think, a big innovation of the program. And beyond that, it can be lonely. Looking for your first board is, it's a process. It takes time and it's a little bit lonely. It's easy to be someone who, has been successful and maybe hasn't been turned down for anything for a really long time. And now you might have to interview for a dozen boards before you find the right fit. So, there's a piece of it that's just creating a safe place and a safe network. We also encourage people in the program, and I'm sure that you're doing this even more now. If you get a call for a board that you're not interested in, know the other people in the program and who might be a good fit and share those opportunities. And that there's a lot of different elements to it. That's just a little preview, but it was really about making it a lot less painful and more pleasant, frankly. And that has made a big difference.
It is true, and it is this really strong network, and we reach out to those individuals who've gone through and are now on a board for the people we're now putting through this 6-month program, and they've been so helpful. And as you know, we also acquired Maggie Wilderoder's Board Academy Boot Camp, which is a day and a half. So we have the 6-month program, the day and a half program, but it's all to really make sure people can be empowered, right? To be in charge of their destiny, to get on that board and be confident about what they can offer. So you've done so much in this area. And I also applaud you for what you did at your 27 years at Deloitte, because you were the expert in corporate governance and you started the Center for Corporate Governance. You were the founding member. Uh, yeah. And so from your time there, what did you see in terms of why greater diversity on boards was important from that perch, that perspective as a consultant at Deloitte?
Well, the program that we developed at Deloitte was, very high level, advisory, strategic consulting practice. So we were dealing with the very highest level of the organization, the CEO and the board. And I think I worked with over 100 companies when I was in that role, in various capacities. And I started to see some patterns emerge and realize that, although there were exceptions, I was often called in to help a company in two different completely different situations. One was a great board and a great executive team that was highly functional and wanted to make sure they stayed that way. So they would work with our team to ensure that they were constantly looking for best practices, they were constantly upping their game. And then the other extreme is we were often brought in on the other side of a crisis or some other, dysfunctional situation. And I didn't need to do a ton of research to notice that the boards that were great and wanted to stay that way were often more diverse than the boards that were in a crisis or digging their way out of a problem. And so, it's nice that we now have so much empirical evidence and surveys and studies that show that is the case. But I didn't really need all that research. I could see it with my own eyes. So, that was one of the reasons why I'm just a very practical, pragmatic person. And if I could see something that just seemed to be so obviously different from one to the other, introducing that as an alternative to the boards that needed diversity was an easy sell in my mind because I was confident it would make a difference. So that was where this all came from, and I worked with our chair at the time was Sharon Allen, who was the first female chair of any large professional services firm, an incredible leader, mentor. I worked with her to launch that board diversity program at a time where I could tell you for sure it wasn't a foregone conclusion that it was going to be a success. And you were there from the beginning, Janice, as you mentioned before. And, this is something that you have also been passionate about for a long time. I suspect for the same reason that you could see the impact in your day to day as well.
Well, it just makes sense, right? That if a company is serving employees, customers, communities, and shareholders, and I put it in that order, you have to reflect those constituents, and that means a diverse, population and diverse boardroom and diverse C-suite. So, with women's health, you're making a major difference here now. So, what is next for Aspira, and what are your hopes for women's health going forward?
I am super excited about the products that we have in development at Aspira. We have the next generation of our ovarian cancer risk assessment test. We're collaborating with the Dana Farber Cancer Institute to add or layer in some additional data points, including microRNA biomarkers and clinical data that we think is going to even produce an even more effective test for assessing malignancy risk for women with masses, and I think has the potential to really just completely eliminate unnecessary surgery for women who have masses on or in their ovaries, which is exciting. We're also looking to pivot that technology to other gynecologic diseases. In particular, we've been developing endometriosis tests, which is extremely devastating. There's close to 6 million women, or some estimates even more than 6 million women in the US alone, that suffer from endometriosis. It's something that keeps them from going to work. It's something that costs them tons of money. They are misdiagnosed. They spend their whole teen years in horrible pain being told that it's not real. And the only way to identify it now is through a laparoscopic procedure. So you can imagine if you have a 12 or a 13-year-old girl who you think has endometriosis, and the only way to know for sure is to go do an invasive, look. You're going to probably wait a little while to do that for lots of reasons. So having some tests available to identify endometriosis through a blood test is a big deal. And we have published data for the first time. We have developed a protein based test that is highly effective at identifying endometrioma, which is the most common form of endometriosis. And is also, form is in the form of a mass on the ovary. So we're looking for partners to help us to launch that test and drive adoption of it, globally. We also are using the same microRNA technology that we are working with for the ovarian cancer tests to layer that into what we've already learned with the protein biomarkers, and intend to launch an endometriosis test that uses that technology as well. So very exciting there. But, we have a lot of work to do on the other side of even those tests, because I believe, based on what my data scientists can see in the data, that this technology may very well work for other gynecologic diseases and gynecologic cancers. So, this is a really, really important company for anyone who cares about women's health to take a look at and consider making sure that it's in your portfolio, because we need women to be invested. Janice, I'll tell you, it is kind of ironic. I have wonderful shareholders that have been long term shareholders in the company. None of them are women, which I just find really hard to believe, but that's a fact. So I need more women to go invest in companies like Aspira to make sure that we can get the job done.
Well, that's not a good statistic.
No, it is not a good statistic.
And it's a serious message, I think, to everybody who's listening that for, the health well-being of women, but also families and society,
That's right.
we have to invest. We must fund, organizations such as you so that you can continue the great work you're doing with minimal invasive testing to find, ways of therapies that'll be really great for women at all ages.
That's right.
And that payers will see that this should be covered because what's worse is not to be preventative. And women then go in the hospitals. It rises, healthcare costs when it can be done with a simple blood test. Any parting words for our audience on what to look forward to?
My parting words are, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. It's a real honor for me. Any day that I get to talk about Aspira and what we're doing is a good day. So I appreciate that. And look forward to continuing to work with you and the advisory board at Ella Group to keep driving change at the board level.
Yes, I'm so pleased that you're on my advisory board. So you didn't quite leave me. You're still with me, which I totally.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
Nicole Sandford, you have been just, a force at Deloitte, at Ella Group, and now at Aspira Women's Health. You are revolutionizing it. We do need that radical change to take place, but you are positively impacting women's health. And I, for one, am going to invest some more in your company. I hope others will as well. And please continue to speak out on LinkedIn because that's a great way of getting your message across.
Well, thank you. I always say what I think, so that's not
Yes.
likely to change either. But thank you, Janice.
Nicole Sandford, thank you so much again for joining us today and leading the way as CEO and board member of Aspire Women's Healthcare and making all of our lives better as we go into these future years. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to another game-changing conversation on Leadership Reimagined. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or visit our website at ellagroup.com. Thank you, Nicole Sandford, for joining us, and to our audience.